On January 30th, 2022, Steam Incorporated ran an excursion up the main trunk line to Raurimu, with the motive power being DAs 1431 and 1410. I was one of many people who went out to film the excursion, and I first met them at National Park Station. This was a particularly special occasion for me, even though I do sound rather boastful saying that. Regardless, this was the first time I had ever chased a DA-hauled excursion, let alone anything from Steam Incorporated. The New Zealand Railways DA class were built between 1955 and 1967, with the class totalling 146 examples. 1431 is the last surviving Australian-built DA, with most of the class having been built by General Motors of Canada. These engines were actually a standard EMD export model, namely the G12, with minor modifications for New Zealand. I was expecting one of KiwiRail's DFBs to be on this excursion with DA 1431, and got a pleasant surprise when I saw DA 1410 instead of something like 7199. The presence of two vintage diesels certainly helped to make the train look more authentic. Around 9 kilometres north of National Park, not as the crow flies mind, is the famous Raurimu spiral and the settlement of Raurimu itself. The DAs ended their run here, and after stopping in the loop they proceeded to run around the train. It might not surprise anyone to know that loads of people turned up to film these locomotives. I don't blame them either, especially since I can't remember the last time a DA ventured this far up the main trunk. and from what I saw from last year's South Island tour as anything to go by, they are very popular locomotives indeed. As stated previously, 146 DAs were built in the 1950s and 60s. Out of that 146, 85 were rebuilt as the DC class between 1978 and around 1983, while the remainder continued running until the late 1980s. 6 unrebuilt DAs have been preserved, including the class leader, 1400. Steam Incorporated also has a third DA in their fleet, namely 1471, but as far as I know that engine is still being overhauled back in Paekakariki. After seeing them leave the Raurimu and charge up the spiral, I went back down to National Park to film the DAs at the Little Fisher Road level crossing. They made another brief stop at National Park, presumably so people could get afternoon tea or something of that nature. It certainly didn't take long for them to get moving again. I only followed DAs 1410 and 1431 as far south as Waiouru, with stops at the Makatote Viaduct and the crossing loop in Horopito. This was my last catch of the excursion, taken just south of Waiouru with Mount Ruapehu in the background again. If the overhead wires weren't there, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was a scene from the 1960s. And after all that train chasing, I gradually made my way back home to Tauranga, stopping at Kinleith on the way to get a few pictures of DSG 3127. Oh, and this horse as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my first proper look at one of Steam Incorporated's excursion trains.